We've all had at least one done at some point in our life, whether it was a visit to an outpatient center or an emergency room, from chest pain to coughing to falling off your bike at 5 years old or falling off a skateboard at 13 years old. There's always that one exam that doctors tend to order the most: X-rays. X-rays has become such a huge part of the medical field. Without it, we wouldn't be where we are today. So I'm going to go over when X-rays began, how they began, and the impact that they have today on the medical field and the world itself. X-rays were discovered on November 8th, 1895 by a man named Wilhelm Röntgen. X-rays were actually discovered accidentally while Röntgen was doing an experiment with a cathode ray tube. Now, a cathode ray tube is a kind of tube that you would find in one of the bigger, older television sets. It's the tube that displays the images that we see. So while he was doing this experiment, he had a screen covered in some type of fluorescent material sitting next to it. It began to glow. The tube that he was working with contained a glass bulb, positive and negative charges within it. Now, when air was released from the tube and a high voltage was applied to it, the tube produced a fluorescent glow, thus affecting the screen next to it. A new type of ray was being emitted. This was the X-ray. This ray could pass through any substance, almost any substance, and produce this shadow of that solid object. Now, Röntgen soon discovered that as this ray could pass through human tissue, it could not pass through bone. Now, you're probably wondering how he figured this out. Well, he experimented on his wife. And the X-ray that he took that showed his wife's hand was this right here. The actual X-ray of his wife's hand, showing her skeleton with her wedding band on. Now, there's also other materials that X-ray and radiation cannot pass through, her wedding band being one of them. His discovery set the foundation for X-ray and radiology as we know it today. Now, Thomas Edison in 1898 discovered a different type of X-ray known as fluoroscopy. Now, fluoroscopy differs from X-ray in the sense that it's not just a still image of a body part. It's a live image, so like a real-time movie. For example, if anyone has ever visited an outpatient center or an ER and had a swallow test done, where you have to swallow that yucky contrast or that white chalky barium and they watch it go all the way down, that's fluoroscopy. Live X-ray, live radiation. Thomas Edison had an assistant called Clarence Daly. Now, Clarence Daly became a huge deal as Thomas Edison's assistant because he was actually the first casualty from radiation itself. Now, at the time, the effects of radiation were not all that well known. A lot of people were volunteering to get their X-ray taken for the fun of it because they wanted to see their insides. Unfortunately, they didn't know the long-term effects of radiation at that time. In 1918, the first radiographic film was produced, so you could actually have your own X-ray image in hand on a film. Fast forward to the 1930s, a memorial was built in Germany to commemorate the radium workers that had died from the long-term radiation exposure. Now, at this point, people were becoming more aware of what exactly X-ray pertained to and what it could cause to a person. Again, years before that, people would just pretty much X-ray whatever they felt like it, other than just random objects. If they wanted to just X-ray their hand, their chest, pelvis, whatever they felt like it, just to say they did, just to say they could see it, without knowing the effects of it. Now, back to the radiographic film. Film processing was also a major part of X-ray itself. It's a lot different than how it is today. Every film had to be hand processed, meaning it had to be dipped in one chemical to the next and then hung to dry, just like in an old dark room. The first automatic hand processor was developed in 1942. Now, this allowed the film to be processed and dipped without actually having to physically touch the film in between the chemicals. So, an example of that is this right here. This would be an example of a processor for film. So all the chemicals are within this machine itself. So the film would go through the different chemicals, and then your X-ray image would pop out and be developed and ready to view. So in 1972, computed tomography was invented. Now, better known as CAT scan or CT scan, this also differs from just plain X-rays. The CT scan uses a combination of many different X-ray images taken from different angles to produce a cross-sectional image of the specific area that you're looking at. So think about it as different slices, whether it be of your head, chest, abdomen. That CAT scan is going to take different slices from different angles, so it gives you a more detailed picture that you're looking at. The first CT systems were only meant for head imaging. However, in 1972, a whole system was created. In 1980, computed radiography was invented. So this went from having to hand process films itself to just using what's known as cassettes to store the image. Now, cassette looks like this. They come in different sizes depending on what area of the body you want to X-ray. So, say for example a hand, you wouldn't use the biggest cassette, you would just use a small one, just for saving space. So, with the computed radiography, the cassette would be put through a machine that is read by a laser. This would read the image off the cassette, and then your image would pop up onto a computer screen, and there would be your X-ray. So this was a huge advantage from the old style hand processing or the automatic film processing, because you would get your image a lot faster. And again, you're not having to deal with all the chemicals. Even without having to touch them, with the hand processing, the chemicals still put off really bad smells and not good for you. So the computed radiography was a huge advantage in the X-ray field. In 1990, there was another huge advantage. It went from computed radiography to digital radiography. So this is where sensors are used instead of just the traditional X-ray film or the film that's stored inside the cassette. There are no cassettes needed. There's what's called a flat panel detector, which is actually put inside of the X-ray table. Once you take the X-ray, that flat panel detector is connected to the computer that the X-ray technician stands at, and the image is sent right to the computer. So with the advances of having digital radiography, it made the process even faster. But again, when you think about it, anything digital makes everything a lot faster, whether it's computers, cell phones, or X-ray. So digital radiography was, again, a huge advantage because it saved a lot of time, and it also uses less radiation than the older X-ray methods. However, another advantage, in 2009, wireless digital radiography was created. So an example of this would be a digital X-ray portable machine. So what that looks like is this right here. So the advantage with this is that, say for example the patient cannot come to the actual X-ray department, you can take the machine to them. And it's digital, so as soon as you put that cassette, digital cassette, not like the old ones that you had to run through the machine, this is a digital cassette synced up to the digital machine. You place behind whatever part of the body you're X-raying, you snap the photo, picture comes right up onto the screen, which also you can see right here as an example. You can see a chest X-ray right up on that machine. So this is another excellent advantage in radiology, is because of how much more efficient, how much more easy, better for the patient, better for everybody, because you get results a lot faster. And again, just like with the older type of X-rays, you still have a cassette, but this one is digital. So the X-ray film or the image is stored on that cassette, and it's synced to the machine, so it sends it to the machine, and you get the image right away. Now, X-ray today has taken such a great turn, such a bigger step for diagnosing and treating patients. now radiation is so much more monitored than it used to be. So it's a lot safer for people to work in the field. It's a lot safer for patients. Even though CAT scan does use more radiation than X-ray, it's still a lot less than what it used to be years ago when people were getting all of the bad effects from radiation, not understanding what it causes. Radiology has become such a diverse and important part of medicine. Without it, we wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't be able to diagnose patients with fractures, diseases, cancer. It's just, we need it. We definitely need it. The technological advances have provided smaller and lighter and more portable equipment that produce higher quality images. Because again, even though this was a printed out picture, you can tell that the original first X-ray was not the best quality. So now X-rays provide so much more detail and so much more quality for the radiologist to look at. It gives them more opportunity to diagnose a patient and see something that they might not have seen years ago to help someone. And again, X-ray uses less radiation than it used to be. It's safer. We have lead that protects people, protects the patient, protects the techs. So that way you don't have to worry as much going in and thinking, oh my gosh, am I gonna grow a third eyeball by the time I'm done with my chest X-ray? A couple other things that I didn't mention that are also a part of radiology is MRI and ultrasound. I didn't mention these because they don't use radiation like CAT scan and X-ray does. MRI uses magnets, ultrasound uses sound waves, but they are still an extremely important part of radiology. But X-ray is really what began it all. So when you get an X-ray done and you see your bones pop up on the screen, now you can say, it takes a lot more than just pressing a button and snapping a picture. There's a lot behind it. There's a lot of history behind it. There's been so many technological advances that have brought us to where we are today. And again, without it, we wouldn't be where we are in the medical field. So I hope that you can take something away from this and understand X-rays and radiation a little better. I can go in a lot more detail, but it would take all day because there is a lot to it. I'm actually an X-ray tech and I've been doing it for 3 years, so I could write a book about everything that's involved with it. But basically, it's such a special field to be a part of, and it's such, a special feeling knowing how much improvements and how important it is to everyone and to diagnosing patients, so that way we can help people and make them feel better.